Hi, welcome back to FutureFast, and we have Babla with us. And those of you who's not familiar with Babla, I urge you to look at the previous podcast where we had a conversation where he shared his journey, and it's very interesting. And most importantly, the kind of career moves he has made, very exciting. And particularly for those of you who's in a professional ecosystem and who want to see do things that you always wanted to, I think perhaps you will get some tips out of that. And for those of you who's for the here for the first time, FutureFast is an effort to bring in people who are doing things which are bound to have some impact, positive mostly in the on the future. And perhaps through these conversations, we'll be able to get some tips or some thought process that we could potentially try to apply, employ in our own businesses or life. That's the whole idea. And enjoy the ride while uh, you listen to this and then go and catch up with Babla's previous conversation if you missed it. Babla, thank you so much for joining us once again. And this time, I wanted to ask you more about your professional journey. So, here you started off in the software professional, and obviously in a services company, you went about doing, and that is where you in your previous conversation you mentioned that you wanted to do something more or move up the value chain, right? That's what that was a term. If am I right? I think that's
Yeah,
something you wanted to move up the value chain,
yeah.
and so obviously you moved into a bank more from a technology side of it, right? But how was your journey from within the bank? Because you spent a long time, you stepped out and got back into the bank. So, what is that magnet that is pulling you back, and what is it that in the bank, or is it the role, or it's the bank?
I think a couple of things, and also just to clarify, as much as I started my career in technology, I moved to the business with my MBA
Oh
into
yeah,
strategy
you
consulting and
mentioned.
product. Yeah, and now I would say I'm a bit of a misfit because I've done tech, I've done business, which is great because digital is all about the intersection of business and technology. So it actually and that's my passion. Digital is my passion. Digital and product is my passion. So I think that's what excites me. And in the bank, like why I came back to the bank was a couple of things. Well, I think one is just around culture, right? The
Hmm.
culture at the bank is amazing. It's almost like your extended family or your second home, because folks are extremely supportive and collaborative, right? I think there's work to be done, but then there's work to be done in the right approach, if you can appreciate what I'm getting at, right? Like if it's not just about getting the results, but it's also about how you support it to get the results, how you set up to get the results, what are the frameworks and the structure to get the results, and a lot of that relates to culture. So there was a couple of things which drove me to become a boomerang at the bank.
No, but
One is
usually whenever people say bank, either people find the banking ecosystem is very boring, or sometimes it's very aggressive. But you're saying it's the culture that attracted you back into the bank. So,
yeah, no, exactly. And it's also, it depends on what part of the bank as well. Like banking sector and banks specifically have transformed
mm,
over many years, right? Like when you
mm,
think about some of the banks here in Canada, for example, they are big banks, and probably after the government of Canada, we have the most amount of data, right? So in that sense, and also banks have or are becoming technology companies. right? So your traditional bank where you had to go into a brick and mortar store and do your banking transaction, that's all long gone, right? Like we still have that. Obviously, we need that, but it's this whole concept of bionic banking where
But how do you see, the same technology and digital is making a lot of non-bankers compete with banks, right? At least most of these fintech companies,
yeah.
right? They are giving big run for money to banks. So how do you see your role, which is at the core of handling digital for the bank, which is what the non-banking fintech companies attack with, right? So how do you see this? You're like you should be the gatekeeper for the bank now from a competing with fintechs, right? From a
Yeah,
digital perspective.
exactly. I think that's a great question, but I think when you look at disruption and you look at non-traditional competitors, because that's exactly what you're getting at. I think you've got to segment them, right? Like you've got your large, non-banking, non-traditional competitors like the Amazons and the Googles and the Apples, because they are also getting into payments, for
Correct.
example, right?
And some
And
of their
Amazon.
sizes are bigger than many banks, right?
Exactly. So you've got your large
Or
non-traditional
even Starbucks
competitors.
for that matter, right?
Oh
I
yeah,
believe it's what $4 billion only sits in the cards.
yeah,
The what do you call that? Loyalty card.
yeah.
$4 billion sits there.
Exactly. And so you've got the large non-traditional competitors, and then you've got fintechs, right? I think so we from a banking perspective, from a traditional bank perspective, we've got to compete with both the high end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum in terms of competitors. But I think increasingly what we're seeing in the market is, fintechs, they can complement banking services, right? So when you think about open banking as an example, there's an opportunity for both banks and fintechs to collaborate there, and then Canada is in the forefront of setting up a regime around open banking. There's lots of opportunities for partnership with fintech in open banking, right? And second, when you look at a bank like RBC, for example, we are at the forefront in terms of innovation. We have a separate ventures division that's focused on incubating startups or acquiring startups, right around
There is a
non.
aggressive promotion happening in India about come to Canada for startups.
Oh, there you go. Right. So, and when you think about, and I think also how we're approaching it is around ecosystems, multi-sided marketplaces, and also beyond banking, right? Historically, we would have been more product driven, saying, hey, you have a need for deposit, so let me help you with the deposit account, or you have need for credit, so help you with credit or solve your payment needs. But that's too downstream when you think about it, right? Whether you're trying to buy a house, you don't start with getting a home loan, you start with looking for a house, right? That's where your journey starts. Or if you're an entrepreneur, you'd probably first register your business, or first come up with an idea, a business plan, and then register your business before you come to the bank, right? So we used to be very downstream in the value chain, but with the approach around a separate ventures division, the approach around going into beyond banking solutions, that's how we are responding to the competition, right? And also, more importantly, as much as there's competition, I think more importantly, we shouldn't forget about customer needs and preferences, right? Increasingly, customers are used to digital experiences through Amazon, for example,
Correct.
right? So they expect the same. They expect the same from their energy companies, their banking companies, their consumer products companies, and all the
Correct.
companies, right? The customer expectations have gone, are at the next level, especially coming out of the pandemic. So there's multi-sided approach to, for the major disruptors, to the fintechs, to our own venture division, right?
So what kind of trends do you see in the digital space today that are changing the course, and also where you see where bank is leading it and where you see bank is following, like Amazon or Apple or other fintech companies? What kind of trends are happening right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a number of trends. Like, obviously, AI is top of mind, and in fact, I think was it this week that Microsoft's indicated that they want to integrate ChatGPT into all
Correct.
Office products, right? Like
Correct.
even Microsoft
Yeah.
Word will
Yeah.
automatically
Right. Last
create.
week they did.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be integrated. So even RBC, for example, we have our own AI division. And end of the day, how am I, when you solve for customer needs and preferences, how do you make sure it's delightful, right? Like, and uh, I think it's all about, it's going to be all about how you integrate both digital and human experiences, right? Because you've got and that's the whole idea on bionic banking
Do
that I
you
indicated.
do you also see metaverse happening here? Because a couple of banks have started implementing metaverse in India.
Yeah. Metaverse. I know Facebook was big on metaverse, but since then I think they've switched their strategy to focus more on AI versus metaverse. Not metaverse, not so much yet in
Okay.
in
Okay.
in Canada. But I think, in fact, a couple got married in the metaverse last week
Oh,
through
okay.
Taco Bell. It is sponsored by Taco Bell, so Taco Bell was able to
Right.
market the wedding
Oh,
and
we did have those things in India. In fact, one of the first weddings that happened in Chennai on Metaverse in India was sponsored by quite a few of these crypto exchanges. Couple of crypto
oh, very
exchanges had
cool.
sponsored it. So, no,
Yeah.
but actually there are two banks that are running those projects. It was announced, and I think I know one of the companies was working on that project in India.
Oh,
So
very cool, very
though
cool.
though I was not really very convinced with the kind of use case in terms of what exactly is it, and you wear the VR headset,
Yeah,
which is now called Meta 2, right, Oculus, and then you get a banking experience. So I thought, why do you have to do that? You can anyway just use the phone. So why do
yeah,
you have to blind yourself technically, right? Plug it in, blind yourself, and see virtually the bank, interact with the manager. Why do you have to do that?
yeah.
But yeah, right now the use cases sound as silly as literally as what I said. But
Yeah.
a couple of banks are going for that. But hopefully there will be better use cases coming. Clearly, unfortunately, I believe that a lot of great technology get killed by using using them on lousy use cases.
Yeah.
I
No,
I
I hear
hope
you.
I hope
I think
metaverse doesn't
I think
kill
what you're
them.
getting at is product market fit, right? Like if there's
Yeah.
no product market fit, then what are you solving for? I have a friend who has a company in Mysore,
Okay.
and he used to work at Microsoft Robotics, and it's called Suit. And his whole idea is, you
Oh, that
wear this.
HoloLens they had. Okay.
Yeah, and so you get transformed to the metaverse, and there's a couple of use cases. One use case is around learning. Like, how do you democratize learning to the
That's a
masses?
huge use case. But yeah.
Right? Especially think about rural India that may not have access to quality education, and think about a use case where I connect rural India to MIT professors or Stanford professors or Harvard professors, right, in the metaverse. So that's one use case. Another use case is actually sports. If you want to go play cricket in Lords.
Yeah, that is true. But see, I think my take is the device dependency is going to
Yes.
delay it because how much the cost can come down, right? See, in India today, Meta glasses, the VR wear costs around 50,000 rupees,
Yeah.
uh, and they have partnered with Reliance. So Reliance and Meta has some equity in Reliance as well, right? With Geo, so
Right.
they may come up with a much more commercially viable lens. But how much the cost can come down? Will it come down to 2-3 thousand rupees? I guess at best it may come down to 50% of it from 40, 45 to 20, 25.
Yeah.
And so still it is a huge limitation, right? In India, I think still the majority selling phones, smartphones are sub 15,000 rupees.
Oh
And this
yeah, I
is
know.
clearly an accessory. So I think we still have, from an adoption point, it has to go beyond the device limitation, is my take personally at this point in time. But yeah, 5G has come, but complete rollout will take another 2, 3 years across India. So is
Yeah, yeah.
5G there? I'm just curious. Is the
Yeah, yeah, we
5G
have
already there?
5G. We have 5G in Canada. Yeah.
All right. Okay. We have it in Bangalore, but across India, it'll take another 2, 3 years at least.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, metaverse is great. With 5G, it becomes asynchronous. But point is, how many people can afford the
Yeah,
gadgets and the
exactly. And
dependency? Those are
especially,
the
yeah, we're still in like the first generation of metaverse. So hopefully
yeah,
things will
yeah,
improve
yeah. I know we
and
have a long
cheaper.
way to go. Uh, See, as a product leader, you when you make decisions, how do you prioritize your decisions? What are the key parameters that drive your decision making?
Yeah, there's a number of parameters, but I think what's key is the customer problem that you're solving, right? Like I think, and it's around the why, right? Like I would, my take on it is around, do you have the right problem that you're solving, right? Because if you don't have the right problem, then to some of your discussion from before, you may not find product market fit, right? So it's all about the problem.
Right. But how are you addressing it, right? From point of now having gone digital, right? But a bank is one of the very highly compliance driven
Yeah,
businesses. So, as much as you want it to be customer friendly, you also have to be compliant with whatever the demands of documentation or signatures and all these things, right? All the
yeah, yeah,
data
yeah,
because
yeah,
so
yeah.
see, it is lot easy for an Amazon to get rid of a lot of it because they don't have to deal with a compliance agency like you do. So, how
Yeah.
do you balance that?
No, that's a great question, and let me talk about maybe innovation within banking to solve for that, right? So through the pandemic, what had happened was, a lot of our products were, for example, for in-person interactions. Now you had this pandemic black swan event, everybody's home, right? And a lot of our products, which were supposed to be used for in-person, in-branch, wouldn't work, right? Because everybody's home, nobody's coming into the branches. So we had to be really innovative around how do we take an in-branch experience to a remote experience while still meeting our regulatory obligations, right? So that's when, as an example, when you look at innovation around KYC, like know your customer, traditional
Mm-hmm.
KYC would have been through checking your ID, checking your passport, making sure you look at other documents. But then the new age KYC is all around digital ID verification, right? Where you can, at the comfort of your house, you can upload your license, and we've got an AI engine that's going to check your license against the database, the government database, to make sure it's a valid ID. Take a selfie, match the selfie with what's on the ID. So that's something we were able to launch. Also, there's verification by trusting another trusted source. So, for example, I could log in using my other bank's credentials or maybe like the government credentials, and I would trust that the other bank or the government complies with the record keeping requirements, right? So that's the innovation around remote onboarding of clients, for example, or remote interactions with clients, right? So as much as we've got compliance requirements and it's a highly regulated industry, there's innovation that the sector's done around how do you still have the right balance where you're still meeting requirements, but then you don't lose sight of customer experience,
Right.
right?
It's a walk on a tightrope, right? Clearly,
Yes.
because no matter what you do, it is like that grid work, right? What are the touch points of compliance, or what goes outside of it, or what falls in between? And so it's always about working through a multiple layered net to make sure that nothing slips out, at least from a compliance point, while you still
Yeah.
try to keep up with the customer.
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, even when you look at an Amazon versus an RBC, because I've got perspectives in both, like both are unique challenges, right? Like working in industry or a startup or a tech have unique challenges, right? Like as much as maybe Amazon doesn't have the same regulatory regime, um, the complex challenges of a global product, complex challenges of supply chain, which is the space I was in, where everything's interrelated, right? When you look at the first mile, middle mile, and last mile, I was in the middle mile supply chain optimization. I could do the best in middle mile, but then if something went wrong in the first mile or the last mile, then all my work is not gonna go far, right? Versus when you look at banking, for example, and especially like large company transformation, it's a different challenge, right? Like, how do you, to your point, there's at Amazon, my only factor would have been, let's say speed to market, right? But in a large company, I've got multiple lens that I need to use. Where the regulatory regime, how do I look at that? How do I solve for customer problems? How do I compete with my competitors? Right? It's a unique challenge, and I think both bring different perspectives in you. It's not one size fits all, obviously. Like I can't use the same solution I used in banking to RBC or vice versa. But then there's lots of transferable skills in terms of how do I still think big in the industry, or how do I still invent and simplify, right? Like how do I make things simple versus more complex? How do I bring bias for action into industry, right? But I think I think what I'm getting at is both present, obviously different grounds. These are different grounds, but then and different challenges. So there's great learning in both sectors. It's how
what
do
are
you
your
solve
biggest
problems?
what are your biggest fears in this context, right? As much as it's a challenging opportunity to innovate, what are your fears? Uh, uh, I think
I think there's the economic, there's different, like you can break down fears into different things, right? Or maybe less than fears. It's about what are the things that maybe I think about, right? So you've got macroeconomic effects, like you saw what happened at Silicon Valley Bank, and we are getting into a recession. Whether it's going to be a mild recession or more than mild, time will tell. But we are getting into a recession. So there's things around what's happening in the economic side of things. Things around obviously solving for consumer needs and pain points. Things around effectively competing with competitors. So I think there's a number of forces of change out there, right? So it's so I wouldn't want to pinpoint that, hey, the macroeconomic climate is more important than competitors or customer needs. They're all important. They're all important, and that's what makes it fun, right?
right. Who according to you, I mean, even including your competition across, or not just necessarily only in Canada, perhaps North America or globally, who do you think, which bank you think is doing a great job at it? Is there some bank you actually follow and say, these guys are actually doing something great?
Yeah, there's lots of innovation coming from smaller banks in the UK and Australia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've always been in the forefront of innovation. Like I was, and it could be. I think I'm sure you would appreciate this. Like innovation is not just about blue ocean strategy or greenfield, right? Innovation is also evolution, and innovation could look different for a product innovation to a service innovation to a customer experience innovation. They're all in their own right innovation, right? So I think there's this Australian bank, I can give an example where when they called to card or credit card, the customer experience team was trained to talk about other aspects that would impact the customer, right? Like, make sure that you figure out your health card, you can call this number. For your driver's license, you can call this number. Because what, and that's a great example of customer service innovation. It's not a product innovation, but the whole idea there was being empathetic, one, to the customer situation, and two, helping them out, saying, hey, I just had to disable your debit card and I could have hung up the phone, but no, I wanted to go beyond, right? Because as a customer, I want to make sure that you get what you also think about all these aspects because you lost your wallet, right? So innovation like that to other kinds of innovation around 3 clicks to open a bank account, right? Like versus 10 different steps and clunky experience, right? Because when you look at the core of banking, it's all like the products are quite standard, right? Like you need a loan, I'll give you a loan. You need a bank account, I'll give you a bank account. So I think the innovation, especially in banking, especially when you look at the core products, innovation tends to be around customer experience. Innovation tends to be around automation. Innovation tends, right? So it's because product innovation is, I can't come up with a brand new type of mortgage. Correct. Right? I could have different maybe flavors of it, saying, hey, I'll give you the flexibility that you'll have 2 segments. One will be a fixed rate, the other segment will be a variable rate. So you can have, yeah, exactly. So you can have different flavors, but then the core product suite remains the same.
See, now even in Canada, I think they're open for investments in crypto, right? Cryptocurrencies are investable, which is actually in India, it is referred to as an instrument of investment. It is not got an asset status, but you can still invest. So something similar is available there in Canada. I think there are a few banks have even been given permission. I'm not sure about your bank, whether your bank is one of the banks who's allowed to integrate it into your digital wallet.
It's still not mainstream. Like crypto is still not mainstream in Canada. There's specialized, I would say, non-financial entities that are specializing in crypto, but it's not
typically refer to here as NBMs, non-banking financial corporations.
Yeah. Those entities have interacted, but I think especially with what happened with FTX, and I think what's happening with the broader economy, I think crypto's crypto. I think it's with FTX especially, like there was a bit of a bust with crypto, but it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, right? Because these busts, you learn from these busts.
Yeah, see, from my perspective, FTX was primarily a compliance issue. It had nothing to do with crypto, right? It was. I think you will be familiar too. What happened in Satyam, right? What happened to Satyam Computers in India was a compliance issue. It couldn't have been attributed to every IT company in India. So I think FTX was a classic case of complete collapse of compliance. I mean, there was no proper governance. There was nobody keeping up with the compliance. They just did however they felt up right, which was obviously wrong. And they took the whole money out, like how Satyam, the whole money was taken out and put in Metas. And here, literally, they put it in another firm.
Another hedge fund, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it was but it is unfortunate that a lot of the heat had to be borne by cryptocurrency per se,
Yeah.
which had no fault of its own, right? It was.
No, I think blockchain still has a lot of merit, right? I think lots of applications, whether it's digital contracts, is a great application of blockchain. But I
Do
think
you have any mandate to look at blockchain as well in your scope of product and digital side? Is there any mandate for you to look at it? Or do you have any pilots that you're working on? I don't have
no,
to tell
not
what, but at least at a high
no.
level.
That's not part of my mandate.
Okay. So it's still at arm's length.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
incidentally, in India, banks have started exploring blockchain a lot more closely. Like I told you, even metaverse has been explored by a couple of banks in a
yeah.
customer engagement aspect. But yes, there is an extent. There's more proactive initiatives are there from how to incorporate blockchain, how to bring in something with this technology.
Right.
So now, uh, how is these things changing your perspective in your approach of your product development? As a product owner and product development, perhaps it is not in your mandate, and you see so many things happening externally. So, how does this change your perspective? How do you prepare for it yourself?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is around, obviously, making sure that you're tracking the trends, and not just tracking, but also what are the implications to your sector and your customers. But I think at the crux of it, I think the fundamentals don't change a lot, and I'll tell you why. Like, a lot of it is, being, especially in product, it's about, as I said, what's the making sure that you're focusing on the why, and what's the problem that you're trying to solve. But to give you an example, like, it's there's so much insights that you can get through data that helps you focus on the foundation, right? So, for example, one of the trends that we were looking at was, how many customers would like to complete transactions end-to-end online, right? Because this whole belief that customers like to go complete it online, especially coming out of the pandemic and things like that. But interestingly, when we looked at the data, we actually segmented the customers into 3 different segments, right? Like, there was this customers that you would find them in the self-checkout lane in a grocery store. They didn't want any help. They would want to check out on their own. And then there was this segment that always wanted to have that expert advice. And then there was this customers in the middle that wanted the best of both worlds. They were comfortable doing research online, comfortable starting things online, but they wanted to finish with an expert. So what I'm trying to get at with that story is, a lot of it is around, getting the foundation and the fundamentals right. There's always the shiny objects that's out there. We'll have to understand implications of that and solve for it. But I think we cannot lose sight of the foundations, right? So how I prepare for all these trends is, again, focusing on the customer and the customer needs, right?
So you say that I mean, it's fair to say that you are today preparing your bank from a custodian of your customers' money to the custodian of your customers' data.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. And then, through data, obviously, we can solve for unique needs and tailored needs. It's similar to how,
Yeah, I mean, you as a bank don't have to compete with Amazon with transactions, right? You have to compete with data eventually. So, and you actually have the data.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So, custodian of money to custodian of data. Babla, thank you so much, and I'd like you to uh, uh, please come back for our future conversation. We want to dig you to get some future perspectives and also possibly some predictions out of you. And those of you who stayed on till now, you liked it, please go ahead and share it with your network. And also look at the links, follow Babla's other initiatives. And if you've missed his first conversation on his journey, please look it up. And do join us once again for the third part of the conversation where we talk to Babla about his perspectives on the future. And also, hopefully, we'll get him to make some predictions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Babla, once
Thank you.
again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.